hope you're ready for another episode of Bitcoin and the Arts, because that's what you're about to get. I'm John Stuart, glad to be here again. Hope you guys are glad to be listening. Today is going to be maybe a little bit different of a show than it's been in the past. I feel like I say that every time, so it's moot at this point. Today, I think I'm going to split this episode up. The first half, we're going to talk about Ascribe. It's this new company that's making a bit of a stir in the Bitcoin world. And after that, we're going to talk about somebody who's making an even bigger stir, and that's Taylor Swift. What does that have to do with Bitcoin? You're going to have to stick around to find out. I'm going to get a little bit personal and opinionated, I guess, in this episode. I haven't been afraid to say how I feel or think about certain things, but this may be a little bit more so prepare yourself for that as well. First, let's talk about Ascribe. This company describes itself as a notary and timestamp for intellectual property and creative works. They use Bitcoin blockchain to register works of art and timestamp them. Now, we, a while ago, covered a company called Monograph, who was doing basically that same thing. Ascribe has maybe a few other things there that set them apart, I guess. For one, they claim that you could use this to, well, I guess I should say the point of this is to secure intellectual property rights over a piece of art. And I guess one of the things that's a little bit different than Monograph is they're actually talking about doing this with physical things and like taking a picture of it and doing it, which I don't know why you would need to do that, but I guess it's something they're talking about. I think the biggest thing that sets these guys apart from Monograph or anything else like this that I've heard of before is that they actually have built a web crawler that uses machine learning basically to find anywhere on the internet where your piece of art may have been, a digital copy of your piece of art, and it keeps track of the original and it knows all these counterfeits and stuff. I think that's really interesting. From a technological standpoint, I think it's pretty cool. It's kind of a little bit scary in some ways. I think for like statistical purposes and stuff, it'd be awesome to trace where your things have gone. Eventually, being able to trace where your art has been going is going to lead us into a discussion on piracy. People are saying that this could possibly end piracy, not because it allows people to secure copyrights, because people can already do that. People have already been copyright. People copyright. Nobody's pirated music that's not copyrighted because you wouldn't have to pirate it. It wouldn't be stealing to get it or to use it. But Ascribe, with their web crawler, machine learning and stuff that they're incorporating into it, Ascribe thinks that they are going to be able to find people who have stolen stuff and eventually, I guess, be able to prosecute them. I mean, not them. They would bring it to the government, I'm guessing. And that, I kind of have I have a problem with that. The piracy thing is kind of complicated, and I generally support piracy, but I know people who don't, and I can understand and respect and sympathize with why they don't. I think there is some stuff about it that's not ideal, and I tend to lean towards really lax ideas about intellectual property if I believe in it at all. I kind of go back and forth on whether I believe that somebody can really own an idea or some intangible thing. That's a really complicated issue, and so I don't want to like make this Ascribe thing look like this horrible thing, because I understand why people want to keep track of their art and they don't want it to get stolen, because I make art. I record music, I write songs, and I really think it's awesome when people pay me for it. Now, that I give my stuff away for free because I want people to hear it more than I want to get paid for it, I guess. I guess that's what I would, at the end of the day, that's why. And I think that other people should have the same attitude towards their art, but a lot of them don't, and I understand that. For a lot of people, it is their job. It is how they make money, and I would love to make money that way, but for my own personal stuff, I've been, in the past couple months, I've recorded an ad for somebody, and I love doing that kind of stuff. In fact, if anybody listening to this wants me to record an ad for them or something, get in contact with me, because I'd love to. And I love doing like commission kind of work. That's great, and I would love to do something like that for my job. And as far as that goes, if I'm doing something for somebody else, I guess I can't force them to give it away for free unless I make that part of the contract. But for my own personal music, it doesn't feel right for me to force people to pay for it, if that makes any sense. But being able to prove authorship is important, even if, like me, you're not necessarily trying to prove ownership. I think one of the problems with digital music is that it's really easy for people to, not just to steal it and listen to it, but it's really easy for people to take credit for it. It's easy for anybody to just post something online and say that it's theirs and they made it. And there's been many cases where people have done that. And I have a much bigger problem with that than I do with people stealing digital things that have no scarcity, which I guess with Ascribe, they're talking about creating scarcity with this. But it's kind of, in my opinion, like a pseudo scarcity or a faux scarcity, because you can keep track of what's the original image, but it can still be copied. And even if their machine learning web crawler can figure out which ones are copies and which is the original, nobody who's looking at it is going to be able to tell. I'm assuming that, and I'm assuming that people can copy it well enough that it's gonna look as good as the original. That's one of the benefits that digital has over analog mediums, is that it can be copied exactly without losing quality. All that aside, I think it's really good to be able to prove authorship, even though I wouldn't be using something like this for myself to hunt people down who are pirating my stuff. I mean, my album that I put out last year is on the Pirate Bay, but it's also for free on Bandcamp and stuff, and on SoundCloud. So like, if you really want to go out of your way to go to the Pirate Bay and torrent it, go ahead. But like, it's not pirating if you get my stuff for free, because it is free. But I would be a little bit more upset if I saw somebody posting one of my songs and saying that they wrote it, and it's or even that they recorded it and they just post the exact same recording that I made, or they make their own recording and say they wrote the song. I have a bit of a problem with that, and this is where the whole complexity of the intellectual property thing comes in, because if I don't think that I necessarily have the right to force people to pay for it, how can I think that I can be mad at somebody else for taking credit for something I did? And yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of gray area there, and like I said, I'm kind of wishy-washy, and I go back and forth. It's hard for me. It's an issue that's close to heart, so it's hard for me to pick a side and stick with it. But either way, I think I like to see stuff like this where it's innovative and it's a fresh new idea, and people are doing something cool and putting a lot of thought into it, and it's just another one of the cool uses that Bitcoin has other than as a currency. And to close out the whole more opinionated side of this discussion, although I disagree with a lot of people about pirating and intellectual property and things like that, I think the fact that there's been a lot of discussion about it lately and a lot of people have been speaking out about it is good, because it shows that people care. I'm glad that people care so much about music and they care so much about art, even if I think that caring maybe leads them to conclusions that I don't necessarily agree with myself. I'm glad to see the discussion. I'm glad to see people caring, because I make art, we make art because we want people to care about it, and that is a good thing. This will lead me perfectly into my discussion on Taylor Swift, which is going to be barely even tangentially related to Bitcoin. Taylor Swift is one of these people I've been referring to who has been kind of outspoken about sort of the way the music industry has been going. A few years back, there was Napster and all this stuff, and then Pirate Bay and all this torrenting and pirating music, and that was a big thing. But recently, just in the last few years, it seems like pirating has actually slowed down a little bit because of streaming. Streaming is, in my opinion and a lot of people's opinion, going to be where things are going, I think, as far as the industry of music and the business side of it. Streaming is kind of where it's at right now. It's the cool kid on the block. And Taylor Swift has been pretty outspoken about how she feels about it. She has pulled her music from Spotify because she thinks it doesn't pay artists well enough. I've talked a little bit about streaming. I talked about Tidal a few months ago, and I probably brought up Spotify in that. And I remember I quoted a few tweets. I may reference some of that material again now. But yeah, so Taylor Swift pulled her music from Spotify because she said she wasn't making enough money. Actually, I don't know if it was that she wasn't making enough money. I'll come back to that in a second if I remember. Yeah, the recent thing that's got Taylor Swift on everybody's minds is Apple Music, the new streaming service from Apple. They basically had this program where they were going to let people have a free trial of Apple Music streaming, and I guess they were going to make it free by not paying artists for the plays that they got during that trial period. And Taylor Swift wrote an open letter to Apple saying how she thought that was crap and stuff, and that's like stealing from them. Now, I agree with Taylor about Apple. I disagree with her about Spotify. In that situation, what it comes down to for me is that Apple is going to make money off of Apple Music because people want to stream these songs. If they don't have the songs, Apple doesn't have a product. And they're just taking these songs from people and using them to make money for themselves and not give anything back to them. And I think that's dishonest and kind of a crappy thing to do in general. And so for that, I'd mostly agree with Taylor Swift on her open letter. Although I think open letters, they kind of are a pet peeve for me because everybody's been doing them. There's like this trendy viral thing that I think is kind of emotionally manipulative. Although that's true, I think some good can come of them, and I think people sometimes say things that are worthwhile in them. And I know I read bits of Taylor Swift's. I don't know if I read the whole thing, but I agreed with things that she said in it. Now, the thing with Spotify, she was talking about people not making money off of it. Well, the Spotify case has nothing to do with this promotional thing where they're not paying people for things that they would normally be getting paid for. It's a contractual thing, and as far as I understand, it stays pretty much the same unless there's a change in the contract or it was something that was built into it from the beginning. And I've heard a lot of people recently talk about how Spotify rips off artists and stuff, and I frankly think that is stupid. Because if there wasn't Spotify, people would just be going to the Pirate Bay, let's be honest. Spotify gives people a reason not to torrent things, and that says a lot. That people are willing to use Spotify instead of just go to the Pirate Bay. Streaming can be easier than torrenting. You don't have to wait. You don't have to find or you don't have to depend on seeders. It's there right away, and it's easy. Also, you don't have to, with something like Spotify, where they're generally pretty trustworthy, you don't have to worry about viruses or infections and things like that on your computer. So there's a lot of good things about Spotify that make it worthwhile for people to use instead of pirating music. And for people to go and talk trash about it when it's maybe the last chance they have to actually find a way of making money is kind of ridiculous to me. The reason people think Spotify sucks for artists is because people don't think about the fact that what really sucks for artists are record labels, and that's always been true. Any time that an artist has gotten ripped off, it's probably been because of their record label. And that's one of the tweets I mentioned before. It was Kenneth Pattingale from the Milk Carton Kids saying that Spotify is only a raw deal for people who don't own their own IP. Now that we just had that whole discussion about IP. I don't want to go back into that. But what it comes down to is like, yeah, if somebody else is signing a contract for you and they get to choose how much money they get out of it, you're going to get ripped off. It doesn't matter how much Spotify pays people per play. If the record label is taking a huge portion of it, they're not going to get what they think they deserve for it. And that's just how it's going to work. I think people need to stop thinking that they're going to get babied by this record company and need to take control of their own crap. And maybe that's how I can relate this to Bitcoin, because I think I've said this in a previous episode. With all the peer-to-peer stuff and decentralized stuff and everything, it's all about taking control of your own destiny. That sounds really lame. It's about taking control of your own stuff, taking control of your own life, and that's maybe someone like Taylor Swift could use a little bit of that kind of attitude. I have a love-hate relationship with Taylor Swift. She writes terrible pop music, but I love it, and she's just this thing that everybody loves, and if you don't love her, you love to hate her. Yeah, there's something enjoyable about it, no matter who you are or what you're in it for. I don't know. And I think it's crazy how she's been able to remain popular without really having any slumps or diminishing popularity, and the amount of music that she's been able to sell, and selling CDs, not just digital copies. Nobody sells CDs anymore, but Taylor Swift freaking sells buttloads of them. There's something just incredible about it, and it's funny because it's Taylor Swift and she's doing something right. I don't know what it is. I just think that she's wrong about Spotify, and it's kind of her thing about Spotify kind of just sounds like a whiny brat, but I think with Apple Pay, she's pretty much got it right. I'm sorry for just ranting about Taylor Swift for like 10 minutes. I guess it won't be 10 minutes after I edit it. And so after that rant about Taylor Swift, I just want to go back real quick and talk about streaming, because like I said, I feel like if music is going to be an industry in the future, streaming is going to be how it happens. And to bring this back to Bitcoin and actually make this segment's title a legitimate thing and relate Bitcoin and the arts, I feel like Bitcoin could be great for streaming. Because, I mean, like we've talked about micropayments and stuff all the time. Everybody's always talking about micropayments, and it's this big deal. And people are always talking about tipping. That's what Bitcoin's for, and it's for doing stuff on the internet without having to put in credit card numbers and stuff and making things easy. Imagine if instead of paying for a subscription to Spotify, you could have some streaming service where instead of paying per month, you just set up an account, and every time you play a song, maybe there's like a set price that each play is, and it gives that money, sends it to two wallets, one to Spotify and one to Taylor Swift, for example. Imagine how easy that would be, and it did it all without you having to think about it or input anything. It's just you set it up at the beginning, and anytime you play a song, it sends this set amount to everybody involved in the contract. Or maybe it's like a monthly thing where you put in this much for the month, and at the end of the month, it calculates everything that you've played, or maybe you could even give a rating. So like either things that you've played more often or things that you rated higher, it gives preferential cut of whatever money you put into this. So then people that you like more get more of your money. People that you don't like as much don't get as much. All this stuff could be done with Bitcoin. It could be automated, done digitally over the internet. It's awesome. Okay. I really hope that some streaming service gets on Bitcoin and starts using it, because I just feel like it could integrate so perfectly and make it so awesome. And like if I said you're doing this per play, that's great, because if you go a week without listening to anything, you don't have to pay for that. Whereas when you're paying for a monthly subscription, you do. Or like if you set a limit on how much you pay per month, then you get this much time where there's no ads, and then I guess after your money runs out, just every play after that you have to listen to ads or something like that. I don't know, like the possibilities are endless. If streaming is the only hope for the music industry, the business of music, cryptocurrency could make it feasible, could make it happen, and not only that, could make it awesome. I mean, I just thought of all this stuff kind of on the spot, and it's not really something that I've thought about too much in the past, but it's getting me really excited right now. I'm sure you guys can probably tell. I didn't think I was going to be able to relate Taylor Swift to Bitcoin, and I guess I didn't really. I kind of went through the means of streaming to connect the two together. This has just been an all over the place rant episode. I'm sorry. I hope you enjoyed it. This has been Bitcoin in the Arts. I'm just going to stop talking. Bye.